Right. Well, the steps to get to where we have been are complicated, but essentially we've created one of the most, if not the most powerful federal credit mechanism in the world. We've created a credit mechanism in the U.S. Treasury and the central bank that can print money, whether it's currency or treasury bills, that essentially has no value.
Mm-hmm.
You just print them,
Mm-hmm.
and then whether it's printing physically or digitally, and then you persuade people all over the globe to take them as they're going down in value.
Mm-hmm.
So the Chinese buy $1 billion of treasuries, and they go down 5% every year. Now that's a tax, Patrick. It's a tax that works through the balance sheet rather than through the income statement, and that mechanism has created a financial powerhouse. Now, the people running that mechanism have literally said for the last 15 or 20 years, why should we share this with the American people?
Yeah,
we've created this.
Mm-hmm.
We now have this machinery working. They've enjoyed an unprecedented, sort of financial well-being, and it's almost impossible to manage them. The more wealthy they get, the more difficult they are to manage. Let's pull the rug out from under them. We don't need them anymore. We don't need the American consumer to drive the global economy. We can balance to the consumers in the emerging markets as we move the investment out. And we're moving the military out to go run around the world and protect the investment that we've moved out.
Yeah.
And essentially the big debate in the 90s when I was in Washington was if we're going to adopt the Uruguay round of GATT and create the World Trade Organization and adapt NAFTA, you're going to hear Ross Perot's giant sucking sound of jobs and income leaving the country.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, okay, well, how does the American middle class and the baby boomers jump the curve? Number one, how do you get the performance on pension funds to make sure the retirements work?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make sure they re-engineer their skills, pay down their debts, and do what they have to do to tighten their belts? And so I had a plan on the table that said, okay, here's how we could do it. We could re-engineer government money, investing by place, and instead of organizing government money for fees for your friends and to generate big stock profits for private corporations, why don't we simply optimize government spending and investment by place, re-engineer it in a way that creates lots of equity value for the pension funds, so the boomers can have a nice retirement, and the American middle class can end the decade with some real savings and some real skills. Well, instead that plan was rejected flat out, and instead we decided to have a bubble, a debt bubble. And as a result, we've seen enormous amounts of money shifted out of the pension funds. We're going to see more because, for example, as we restructure the municipality, state, and local government and their finances, we're going to see benefits hit, I think, very, very hard.
I'd like to understand, like I was reading about Illinois, Catherine, and the problems they're having with their pension. Where is this money going? Is it just the loss of the stock market from 15,000 down to 10 or 7, and then it's back up? Where does this money go? How does it get out of the pension funds? Where did it go?
Well, here's the thing. It's like the joy of cooking. There are hundreds of recipes.
Right.
The joy of cooking
Mm-hmm.
cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not any one thing. But as soon as you run a whole pile of money for political criteria on a not transparent basis, then
like a slush fund somewhere to buy a bridge to nowhere or whatever.
Well, you can get killed by 1,000 cuts. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
And I haven't followed the Illinois pension, so I'm not familiar with the specifics there.
It's just one of the many that are having problems.
But let me give you an example. We knew in the early 90s that the last thing Americans needed to do was buy bigger houses, because we knew the price of energy was going to go up. We knew, with growing global population and competition from the emerging markets, that energy prices weren't going to go up. So the last thing more Americans needed to do was to buy bigger houses in the burbs.
Mm-hmm.
That was just not going to be economic. And yet what did we do? We encouraged lots and lots of people to go out and put lots and lots of money in bigger and bigger houses instead of in the things we thought were going to go up.
With low rates.
Right. Now, when we did that, and when the big banks lent them the money. Now, remember, you're a big bank, and you're I'm taking a deposit from you, so I'll be a big bank, and you be Mr. America.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm taking deposits from you. You're depositing in my bank.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using those deposits to finance your employer setting up new companies over in Asia,
mm-hmm.
and I know that in 5 to 10 years, statistically, it's probable they're going to fire you or your income's going to drop. Because in fact, I'm using your deposits to finance your demise. Okay?
Yeah.
But I don't tell you that. I say, oh, Mr. America, I want you to go buy a bigger house, and I make you a mortgage. Okay, now I put that mortgage in a pool, and I know those mortgages are going to have very high default rates because I'm in the process of moving your income abroad. Okay?
Okay.
So what do? I put those mortgages in a pool, and who do I sell that pool to?
China?
No, I sell that pool to your pension fund.
To your pension fund.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you default, you're going to be defaulting on yourself.
Oh, man. I don't like that picture.
Well, but that's the picture we're looking at. If you look at what's going on with all the foreclosures around the country, the biggest owner at the end of the day of the pools that are taking the losses on that are in everybody's pension fund.
So are the foreclosure directly tied with people losing jobs and not getting commensurate salaries to pay for higher energies because their jobs have gone overseas? Is that part of it?
That's absolutely part of it.
Uh-huh.
The biggest problem with there are a couple of problems with the housing market. The biggest one is fraud. Okay, so one, we originated a whole bunch of mortgages that should never have been originated, and everybody knows that. And they were used to do pools and derivatives and other things that were entirely fraudulent. To give you an example, when the bailouts hit in 2008, we essentially gave or loaned to the banks and AIG about $12 trillion.
Mm-hmm.
At the time we made those loans or gifts, they were both, it would have only taken $8 trillion to pay off all the residential mortgages in the country.
Yeah, and I heard that it would have only taken a couple $100 billion to pay off all the bad ones at that point.
It would probably taken more than that, but
you think?
But what you're talking about,
$8 trillion would have done to everybody, just
everything,
everything, commercial
so
too.
No,
just residential. Yeah.
So why we needed $12 trillion will give you a sense of the fraud. I mean, essentially,
sure.
What happened was a group of people got together. I'm going to grossly oversimplify. Issued a bunch of fraudulent paper, used the proceeds to take over the country. And then once they'd taken over the country, they used the country's money to basically pay back and bring in all the fraudulent paper. It's called a leverage buyout.
Say that again? Okay. Walk me slow to this.
So let me walk you through a leverage buyout.
Yeah, I like that.
You're a company and you've got a whole lot of cash.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I decide I want to buy you because, and so I issue securities and say, I'm going to buy his company. You finance me to buy the company. I buy the company.
But I want money. I don't want securities.
I use securities. I go to a bunch of investors and say, I'm going to sell you these securities. I'm going to issue these bonds, and you're going to take these bonds. Okay.
Okay, and so then you're going to pay me with the money they give you.
So when I take over the company, what do I use to pay off the bonds? Your cash. So I take you over with your cash.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
So, and there are thousands of examples of how you can do that, not just to a company, but to a neighborhood or even a country. So we watched trillions of dollars of fraudulent securities get issued and sold all around the world, and then, then after the takeover, the citizens were required to then pay it all back.
Yes.
Or take responsibility for it. But that's what you're watching. So.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite...
It's just like a bad movie.
Well, here's what it is. It is the natural evolution of 500 years of what I call the central banking warfare model. The central banking warfare model, which really has explained the success of Europe and North America is really the central banks print money, and then the military makes sure that everybody takes that money in exchange for natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
So I create phony paper, I give it to you, and you give me back real oil and gas or real stuff, and you have to play that game with me because I have guns.
Yeah.
So
interesting model, isn't it?
Well, it's a model. Here's the thing. Most Americans have been the beneficiary of this model. So in other words, for most of our lives, we've enjoyed the blessings of controlling the sea lanes and the satellites and having a nuclear arsenal and all the sort of covert and overt weaponry that we have. And that has made us very, very wealthy. And the challenge is, if you look at the people who control that mechanism, you know, they have literally decided, well, we don't want to keep funding the American middle class at the level that they've grown accustomed to, and so literally what we started with the World Trade Organization is we started a process that is fundamentally re-engineering the relationship between labor and capital to the benefit of capital, and doing it globally, and I would say that you know, if you believe in sort of market economies and freedom, it's you know, it's a very bad development.
Boy, it doesn't sound good, and I only understand about 60% of it. We're talking with, it sounds ugly, Catherine Austin Fitts, Solari.com, Solari. She has a Solari report, which is 3 one-hour briefings once a month that you can subscribe to, and then she has podcasts of that. Pretty interesting. Might be a great idea for you to protect your wealth as you move forward here. And as we move forward with Catherine Austin Fitts, listen to this.